Hey guys, it's Mark with Hallmark Pool Supplies, and in this video we're going to talk about everything you need to know about operating your sand filter, and I'm also going to explain all the positions, what they are, when to use them, and how to use them. And it does not matter if you guys have an above ground or an in ground or what brand filter you have. If it's a sand filter, they all operate the same, and for this video we are going to be using the S244T, which is a top mount sand filter by Hayward. So the first position we're going to talk about is filter. Now, filter is the position that we have the system in when we're running the pool and filtering the pool for the summer. And it is important to note that for the summer season, when you are running your pool, you need to run your filter system at least a minimum of 8 to 12 hours. For best results, run it 24 hours. So the first position we're going to talk about is filter. And this is the main position that we're going to be in when we're filtering the water in the swimming pool. We also have backwash, and we also have rinse. These are the three main positions that we're going to be using primarily. I'm going to explain all of the positions and what they do, but filter, backwash, and rinse are the three main positions. So let's go back to filter. And when we're in the filter position, like I said, that's the position that we're going to be running the system in when we're filtering the pool. I'd like to show you guys how the water travels through the system when we're in filter. The water is being pulled from the drain or the skimmer or both. It's coming from there, going into the pump. The water's going up through the plumbing. It goes into the multiport or VariFlow valve. It then sprays out on top of the sand, and as the water goes through the sand, it is filtering and trapping all the dirt and debris. Then the clean water goes through the laterals, back up the pipe, and then the water is returned back to the pool. And this is the way the water flows through the system when we're in the filter position. So let's take a look at the multiport here. And on the multiport, we have a pressure gauge. And the pressure gauge is there to indicate the pressure that we're running, and it also indicates when it's time to backwash. How do we know when to backwash? How do we know what our pressure is supposed to be? Well, every system is different, and it really depends on the size of the tank, the size of the pump, how many returns you have. These are just a few of the things that will determine the type of pressure. So the best way to find out what your start pressure is start with a clean tank, make sure it's backwashed, it's rinsed really well, and then whatever your starting pressure is, that is what our pressure is, and then we are going to be backwashing when we exceed 8 to 10 pounds from our starting pressure. For this video, let's just suppose that we're running 12 pounds clean and strong. When we go 8 to 10 pounds above that, that's when we know we need to backwash. So let's just suppose we come out and the pressure is 22 pounds. Well, we know that we're above our starting pressure and we definitely need to backwash. So the first thing we want to do is we want to turn off the pump. We never want to rotate this handle with the pump on, but with the pump off, we can now rotate clockwise into what's called the backwash position. And at this point, we're going to run the system when we turn the pump back on for 1 minute. Like I said, we never want to rotate this with it running. Make sure it's always turned off when changing positions, and run it in one direction. I like to run it in clockwise position all the way. If we pass the position we're trying to go to, don't back up, go all the way around, and it does make less wear on the valve, and it is better for the valve if we go in one direction. So for you guys that go back and forth, clockwise, counterclockwise, you're not hurting anything, but running it in one direction is better for the valve. So now we're in the backwash position, and I want to show you guys how the water runs through the system when we're in backwash. So when we're in backwash, the water comes from the drain in the skimmer, goes through the pump, goes up, comes into the multiport, and instead of coming out like it does in filter, we're actually going to go in reverse. We're going to go through the standpipe. The water is then going to come up through the laterals, and it's going to come up through the sand, breaking up all the debris and the dirt that has been trapped in the sand, and it's going to get flushed out and it's going to go out your backwash line. That is how the water travels when we're in backwash. At this point, 1 minute has passed. We are now going to turn the system off. We are now going to rotate in clockwise position to a position called rinse. We're going to turn the system on, and we're going to let it run for 30 seconds. When it's in the rinse position, this is how the water travels through the filter. Water's coming through the drain in the skimmer, through the pump, up, and it's going to come out just like it does in filter, and it's actually going to settle everything that the backwash broke up It's going to run through. The water's then going to go through the laterals, back up the pipe, but it's still going to go out the backwash line. And that's just rinsing out the tank and the sand and getting everything nice and clean that the backwash broke up. After 30 seconds, we turn off the pump. We then rotate back to filter. We turn the pump back on. We've noticed that the pressure's gone down and we're good to go. Now let's just suppose that we do backwash and the pressure does come down, but it doesn't come down enough. It's still a little high. Well, we just repeat the process. And by repeating the process, out of habit, I like to backwash and rinse and then repeat that process back to back. It just gives an extra thorough clean. This way I know I'm good to go. We're going to have good pressure and I don't have to worry about it. Another reference in regards to backwashing and rinsing your system is the sight glass. This sight glass is an indicator and shows us the condition of the water as we're backwashing and rinsing. You'll see how dirty this is. And as a rule of thumb, you can backwash and rinse until the sight glass becomes clear. I like to do both. I can backwash for 1 minute, rinse for 30 seconds, but I can also look at my sight glass, and if I know the water's coming out clear, then the tank is probably pretty clean and we're done and we're good to go. So now let's suppose that you guys have a pressure gauge that's not working properly, or maybe it's broke, or you don't even have a pressure gauge. We can't come out here and just backwash and guess. We need to make sure we know what we're looking at so that we're not backwashing too much and that we're not backwashing not enough. For an example, we're not going to be backwashing 3 times a week. That's too much. And you're not going to backwash once a month. That's not enough. In the swimming season, the average pool is going to be backwashed every 7 to 10 days. It really depends on the usage of the pool, how clean, how dirty it stays. But as a rule, we can do that. But another visual reference that we can actually see from the kitchen window is we can look out at the pool and we can look at the jets. And if your jets are running good and strong, we know we're good and we don't have to bother with looking at the system. But if we look out the window and we see the jets in the pool are running weak or weaker than normal, then that's an indication that we need to backwash. Another important note to take, you never want to backwash the pool right after adding chemicals. If you guys have to add chemicals after you've backwashed if you need to backwash. And if you do add chemicals and 24 hours or later you need to backwash, that's fine. Just don't backwash right after adding chemicals. Always make sure that your tank is running good, you got good pressure, and then add your chemicals. So the next position that we're going to talk about is waste. And when we go to waste, here again, we're going to turn off the pump, rotate clockwise to the waste position, then we can turn the pump on. And when it's in the waste position, I'm going to show you how the water runs through the system and what waste is used for and why it's there. So when we're in waste, water is then coming from the drain and the skimmer through the pump, up the pipe. It's going into the multiport valve, and what is it doing? It's going directly out of the waste line or the backwash line. We are bypassing the filter. So why would we use waste? Waste is going to be used if a pool accidentally gets overfilled. Maybe you left the hose in, overfilled the pool, maybe there was a rainstorm and we need to lower the water. This is a quick means of lowering the water. When you put it on waste, you do not want to walk away. You want to stay here with the system because the water's traveling much faster and the water will go down fairly quick. Another reason we would use waste is if you have an extremely dirty pool, an algae infested pool. It's really bad, the Black Lagoon. Then we want to vacuum to waste, because if we vacuum and filter, we're just going to clog up the tank. For most vacuuming or normal vacuuming of a swimming pool, you will vacuum and filter, but when it's extremely dirty, like I said, you can vacuum and waste, but when you do so, you will have to stop and add water to the pool because it will take water out of the pool as well. So the next position is winter. Now, before we go into winter, I just want to explain to you guys, if you have any questions or you run into any difficult pool-related problems or issues, check out my Patreon page. I do virtual service calls. I even do phone sessions. And for any of you guys out there that need that, check it out. I'll be glad to help. So we're going to turn off the pump and we're going to put the handle in the winter position. Winter is designed so that we can drain the equipment if we're winterizing the pool. When it is in the winter position, we do not run the pump. And in fact, some people don't winterize their pool. So that's your option, whatever you decide to do. But when it is in winter, we do not run the pump. And winter is a non-grooved position. So if I put it here, here, or here, it's the same thing. What we're doing is we're lifting the valve in the diverter so that everything can drain as far as the equipment, and so that's what winter is used for. So the next position we're going to talk about is the closed position. So when we put it in closed, we're going to turn off the pump. We are then going to rotate the handle and we're going to put it in the closed position, and when it's in the closed position, we do not run the pump. What closed is doing is it's locking everything inside the multiport, and the main reason we would use the closed position is if we are servicing and working on the unit and we don't want to get wet. This is the real reason why we would be using closed. Any other time you would not be using that. So it is a position that's probably the least used on the valve, but now you know what it's used for. So let's take a look at the last position. The last position is going to be recirculate. So once again, in order to get to that spot, we have to turn off the pump. We're going to rotate clockwise to the recirculate position, and then we can turn it on. When it's in recirculate, let me show you guys how the water is circulating through the system, and I'm going to explain what recirculate means. When the water is in recirculate, what is happening is the water is coming from the drain in the skimmer, and it's coming up through the pump, goes through your plumbing, goes into the multiport, but then literally turns around and goes right back through the returns and goes back to the pool. So what we're doing when we're running in recirculate is we are bypassing the filter. At this point in time, the water is being circulated, but it's not being filtered. Now, why would we use that position? In a lot of cases, sometimes you have to add chemicals, and they'll tell you to add chemicals while it's in the filter position. And if they ask you to add chemicals when it's in the recirculate position, this is the position that you would use. Another reason for using recirculate is if somebody wanted to work or service the unit, or there was an issue with the tank and we still wanted to keep the pool open and keep it circulating. It's not filtering, but we can then put it on recirculate to keep the water moving until we make any necessary repairs. And that is what recirculate would be used for. Recirculate is a position that's not used very often either. So hopefully this video was helpful. This was just a general operation video on how to operate a sand filter. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. If you guys need that help, definitely check out my Patreon page. I want to thank all my patrons as well as all my subscribers. Don't forget us at Hallmark Pool Supplies for all your pool needs. My name is Mark. I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.